Dr. Korrel Kanoy is Professor Emeritus from William Peace University, the recipient of the McCormick Distinguished Teaching Award and the Bingham Award for Campus Leadership. She has a psychology degree from the University of Richmond and master's and doctoral degrees from the University of Tennessee, where she studied child development and family relationships. She's a co-author of the Student EQ Edge, Emotional Intelligence and Your Academic and Personal Success, and the accompanying books, the Student EQ Edge Facilitation and Activity Guide and the Student EQ Edge Student Workbook, among other books. She taught courses for 3 decades, also served as a dean. She specializes in helping individuals and organizations maximize their performance by developing emotional intelligence and leadership skills. We're glad she's here today to share her expertise with us. Please extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Kanoy.
All right, see if I can retrieve what Jonathan messed up there. That didn't take much. All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay, terrific. I don't know how to turn the volume up on this.
He'll do it. He's over here.
They've got it. Okay, great. All right, I have to wear the lavalier mic because I don't stand still very well. So I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I want to tell you the story of how I got started in emotional intelligence learning because it's relevant to what we all do every day in the education world. I was teaching the first ever psychology capstone senior seminar class, brand new course, volunteered to teach it, and was struggling about what to teach because, you know, I could teach more research methods or more, you know, theory or whatever, but I really wanted it to be purposeful and meaningful for the students who were about to graduate. So I had just read, by coincidence, Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, but nothing connected there until I read this study that came out of the University of Minnesota about what employers want in young graduates. And what the study basically said is they wanted young graduates to be able to work well in teams, but they didn't do that very well. They also wanted them to be able to act independently and take initiative, but they didn't do that very well either. And I'm going, oh, that's not good. They can't work well in teams and they don't do well independently. And, you know, so it was like, oh, this isn't so good. And amazingly, these employers said, you know, their writing skills are fine. You know, they'll get better at that. We'll teach them what we need them to know about our business or our organization. But every single thing they thought was deficient was an emotional intelligence skill. They just weren't calling it that. So I made that connection. I decided that's what I was going to teach. I immediately immersed myself in the research and literature that was available at the time, which was 1998. It's grown volumes since then, and you'll hear some of it later today. And there were already many studies that indicated how valuable emotional intelligence learning was for a variety of things in our lives. I taught it. The students, their one unanimous comment to me, it was actually a question over and over again, is why has no one taught us this before now? That's what they said. So long story short, I never missed a year after that of teaching emotional intelligence, developed a standalone course about it, et cetera, et cetera. We infused it in our first year experience program, and so we found many ways. And you'll learn more about some of the co-curricular ways that you can infuse emotional intelligence learning as we go through the presentation. So, and I said presentation, it's going to be interactive at times, but I just use that word generically. All right, so there's my answer. All right, first technical failure, bound to occur. Huh. Whoops. There. Okay. So, since I don't know how much all of you know about emotional intelligence, we're going to start from scratch and give you a little bit about what is it, why it's so important to student success, and then end with some ideas about how you can infuse it into your work on your campus. All right, so what is it? I'll tell you there are multiple different models of emotional intelligence out there. I happen to use one called the Bar-On model, The three big ones are Goldman, Laron, and the Mesquite. And the Mesquite is Peter Salve and David Caruso. So those are the three big ones. All right, so a lot of people get all worried when they hear the phrase emotional intelligence. And I do a lot of leadership development with middle-aged men, and they're being made to come to this emotional intelligence thing, and you can see the worried look on their face that I'm going to make them hold hands and sing Kumbaya and hug each other. And I don't do that, because that's not what emotional intelligence is about. Basically, we have different functions in our brain. No surprise there. Our intellectual functions are located in one area, the frontal lobe more, and then the emotional center of the brain is in the limbic system, which is a more primary, in old language we used to say more primitive areas of the brain. So what we're trying to do is teach people how to better respond to the emotions we all have every day, how to better manage those. Notice I didn't say suppress them. And that then will have positive impact on how we cope with bad things, on our relationships, on our success, and so forth. So just a little quiz for you. Write down a number on your sheet. How many emotions do you think the average person has per day? You don't have to be aware of them.
Per hour.
But how many emotions does the average person have each day? You got your answer? Research shows us that confirmed it's 300, but most scientists that work in this area think it's over 1,000. That's phenomenal. And a lot of you might have put down numbers like 10 or 20, because that's how many you're aware of. So that's a scary thought. You have all these others that you're not aware of, but they're affecting you. And I think I can prove this point pretty easily. You're sitting at your desk working, and all of a sudden you realize you're in a little bit of a bad mood, or a little bit anxious. And you think, where did that come from? Right? All right. So, just a little bit, I know some of you work with older students, which is good in terms of emotional intelligence, but the adolescent and young adult brain is not fully developed in terms of the frontal lobe. And because it's not fully developed, emotional intelligence is even a bigger challenge for that age group. So we have to work extra hard by building in practice for people under 25 years of age. Practice reacting to situations in ways that are productive rather than counterproductive. So again, I want everybody just to jot down 2 or 3 things on the notepad right in front of you that come to your mind when I ask you this question. What are the biggest reasons that students who are academically capable do not succeed? What are the biggest reasons students who are not academically capable do not succeed? All right, shout out a few. Motivation. Procrastination, don't take personal responsibility.
Maturity.
Lack maturity.
Fear of success.
Fear of success.
Fear of failure.
Fear of failure. Notice 2 emotion words there.
No self-regulation.
No ability to self-regulate. They work too much. Lack confidence, lack self-awareness.
Make bad choices.
They make bad choices. Lack of self-efficacy. You guys must have taught the same students I did, right? We've all met that student. It's very frustrating. And what's happening is emotions, and the emotion could be boredom. Why do I have to take this class?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they don't try hard because they don't see the value of it. They don't try hard and do it. So it goes on, and we just did that. The reason students underperform in college, when you look at the data, it's almost never a lack of academic skill set. Because guess what? Even if they enter with a lack of academic skill set, as some of our students do, We have learning centers. We have ways to assist them. There's tutoring. And the motivated student can graduate, but they've got to use those resources, which requires motivation. All right, so let's look, in general, emotional intelligence, and when you see me messing with something up here, it's my clock, which is actually my cell phone, because it's the only watch I have. So in general, no matter which model of emotional intelligence you're trying to look at, they have these same characteristics. The idea that emotional intelligence can be learned, therefore I believe we must teach it. Understanding and managing your emotions, that self-regulation piece, then that allows you to interact more effectively with others. I know you've read the studies or heard the news clips about students, roommates, sitting in the same room texting each other about the argument they're having and not interacting face to face. That is so sad. But they don't, because of all the technology, they don't get as much practice with face-to-face relationship management. It's a huge thing in life. Making effective decisions, managing stress. These are the basic pieces. As I said, I use the Baron model. It has these 5 areas. I'm not going to spend any time on the areas because the meat of the Baron model is in each of the 15 skills. I'm going to go through these quickly. To break this up, you're going to see some YouTube clips. I use a lot of YouTube clips. And Jonathan referred to the books that I've written. The facilitation guide has YouTube clips, TV shows, movie segments that more than you could ever possibly use to help students learn what emotional intelligence is in engaging and fun kind of ways. All right, so here we go. Quick walk through the definitions. And by the way, you have a sheet like this in your packet. What I've done is given you the word, the definition, and then how it applies to students. You probably could add another 10 things to each box. But these emotional intelligence skills apply to students every day. All right, so self-awareness, emotional self-awareness, aware of emotions as they occurred and what triggered them. 2 students can walk into the same exam, both with an A average, and one of them is nervous as all get out, and the other one is calm. We mistakenly believe that our emotions are triggered only by situations, and when in fact, most of our emotional reactivity is because of who we are, our values, our experiences. That's a good thing. We just need to understand it better. Okay, so that's emotional self-awareness. Self-regard, strengths and limitations. We all have both. I love Strengths Quest, but what I love about EI even more, the assessment I use, is it gives you an accounting of both. If you don't know your limitations, can you improve? No. No. All right. Accepting yourself despite limitations. The student who beats him or herself up too much is lacking this element of self-regard. And then, if you know your strengths and weaknesses, I know that technology is not particularly a strength for me. I'm accepting of that. I often will delegate that if I can. And then, you don't let it affect your confidence. You do try to learn, but you don't beat yourself up. Self-actualization. Those of you familiar with Maslow, this is not Maslow's version of self-actualization. On the Baron model, it's about, do you have goals? You don't have to know your major. Most people entering college don't know their majors, nor should they, because they'll end up changing their mind anyway. That's what the data tell us. But you might have a goal to make the dean's list, or you might have a goal to earn so many credit hours your first year in college. Something, you have to have something that's important to you that you're working for. And then you receive satisfaction from it. We lose too many students because if they don't get that goal and they can't connect with the material work they're learning, they give up. And so working with students to find that goal, really critical. So what are some of the results for students? I love this photo. You might say that cat doesn't have enough emotional self-awareness, is not experiencing enough fear in this situation, but you got to admire the cat's confidence, right? Right? And then you think that cat has a goal to get to the other side safely. I like to use pictures like this. They're unbelievably effective with students. Hey, remember that picture you showed us of the cat and dogs, Dr. Kanoy? Yeah, they really love these. All right, self-expression. Emotional expression, authentic emotional expression is critical. What happens for most of us, though, is we choose to express most of our emotions non-verbally. And then that leaves it up to other people to guess what might be wrong with us or what might be bothering us. My favorite thing when I was teaching this concept to students was to pick a student who was lounged back in her chair like this and say, freeze. What do you think your body language might tell me? In a quiet voice, that I don't care about this class or that I'm bored or something. Yeah, it could tell me that. Now tell me why you're sitting that way. And sometimes it was, this is just more comfortable. The problem with not expressing your emotions verbally is you leave too much to other people to guess. And they typically, if you've ever read attribution theory, unfortunately they tend to guess on the negative side. So it's better if you're frustrated with somebody you work with, maybe they promised you materials you needed by Thursday at noon, and they don't have them Thursday, and they don't have them Friday, and they walk in with them on Monday. Resist the temptation to go, because that just makes the other person mad. That hurts your relationship. If you're upset about it, go to them Thursday. Where are the materials? When can I expect them? That's much more authentic. And if the person says, I haven't even started yet, and that makes you a little bit irritated, it's okay to say, well, I'm upset that you didn't tell me that the materials were going to be late. I've planned my schedule around this. Authentic emotional expression. Think of it like salsa, hot, medium, mild. Go for the mildest word that will work. Don't say, I'm enraged with you when upset or irritated might work. But the key is it's about being authentic and it's about building relationships rather than letting other people read nonverbal cues and getting upset with us. Independence. The research shows that independence is a great thing, but actually some of the research shows that for some of your students, if they're too independent and don't ask for help, they don't do well. So generally, you want people not to be clingy. You want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, but they also need to know when to ask for help. Assertiveness. This is being able to, I had students, I'm 5'2", okay? I think I smile enough. I would have students tell me that they were scared to come to my office to talk to me. That student lacked assertiveness. I would often say, well, give me some, what am I doing that make you feel that way? Well, nothing. I won't talk to any of my professors. So the simple assertiveness to walk into a professor's office, the assertiveness to address a roommate conflict, the assertiveness to say no. I don't know how many of you live, hopefully you don't live on campus. How many of you have students who live on campus? But if you do, you know that the peer pressure for maybe drugs or alcohol can be enormous. The ability to say no to a peer. All right, so let's watch our first clip. Well, got to get to the next slide. So some of the benefits of self-expression you can read there while I'm bringing up the PowerPoints. Patch Adams, this is a true story. I know a lot of you in the community colleges work with adult students who have come back to school and they finally got it figured out what they want to do. Patch Adams actually enrolled himself, or I guess admitted would be a better word, in a mental institution because he was so depressed. And after a few days of being there, he interacting with the other patients, he discovered something that would give him passion. And that was to become a doctor and help other people that way. And so the clip begins with him heading down the hallway to, since he's self-admitted, he can sign himself out. Patch Adams, if you know his story, is a very irreverent person, so I take no responsibility for what he says or how he says it, but this is a very effective clip. It's not bad.
I'd like to leave. Hunter, we'll have to discuss this at your scheduled time.
I'm leaving.
And have you thought about what you'll do?
I want to help people. Last night with Rudy, I connected to another human being. I want more of that. I want to learn about people. I want to help them with their troubles.
That's what I do.
But you suck at it. You don't even look at people when they're talking. I want to listen. I want to really listen to people.
I'm sorry, Hunter. I can't allow you to leave. I believe you still have some issues to work out.
Well, I don't need your permission because I admitted myself.
Hunter, I must warn you. My report will read AMA, that you were signed out of this hospital against medical advice.
And my report will read IDGARA. I don't give a rat's ass. And my name is Patch.
Okay, did you see examples of assertiveness?
Yes.
Emotional expression, expressing this gives me joy, which also requires emotional self-awareness, right? Did you see self-regard? Did you see any confidence in him? How about self-actualization, passion, goal orientation? These clips, students can boom, boom, boom. They can just identify it right away. And you can show the 5 or 10 minutes more of this movie and show how down he was when he entered the hospital and the transformation. Just finding something that he could enjoy, very important. All right, interpersonal. This is about, interpersonal relationships is not about being an extrovert. It's about, can you form connections with other people so that they trust you and they're willing to work with you instead of against you. And that when you need to work in a team, there's that camaraderie that's so important to make the work fun. Empathy is listening and taking someone else's perspective. You don't have to agree, but you do need to take their perspective. Taking other people's perspectives can then change how we handle something. And I want to tell you a quick story. It's true. And it's not because I'm, full of empathy. My average, when I take the assessment, is that I'm in the mid-range for empathy. But one Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock class, over at 3, student walks in, first-year freshman, bawling her eyes out. I have a very strict attendance policy. It's early September. And it wasn't particularly empathic for me to say, what's wrong, okay? I mean, I am human, I have a heartbeat, so I say, what's wrong? And she says, I broke a fingernail. And thankfully, she was crying so hard that she probably didn't see the look of like, oh my gosh, on my face, because I don't think a broken fingernail is worth that level of crying. But thankfully, that's my perspective. Clearly for her, she had a different perspective. And so I said, stated the obvious, wow, that's got you really upset. And then she said something that turned the conversation. You all are West Coast people. The East Coast has this tradition, I'll say, of debutante balls.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They're too complicated to explain, but they're for young women to dress up very nicely and be introduced to society, and they're very formal and whatever. She said, I'm debbing tonight in Elizabeth City, and it's 4 hours away, and I don't have time to come to class, drive home, get ready, and get this fingernail fixed. Oh, okay. Now, I have new information because I was willing to keep asking the questions to get her perspective about why a broken fingernail is so important. I still don't think they're that important. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of debutante balls, but none of that matters because I have new information. So I called her out in the hallway and I said, look, you know the attendance policy. This is going to count as a cut. But if you get sick later in the semester and have to miss more than 3 classes, I will not penalize your grade. But you've got to calm down first. And you got to promise me you'll calm down before you get in your car. I almost never did that. Right? But that was the time, and by the way, that student didn't miss a class the rest of the semester. So empathy, it can change how you handle a situation. Social responsibility, this is teamwork, doing your fair share. So the student who looks for the academic team to work with on a project because they know so-and-so will take over and do it all, that person's not being socially responsible. The student who turns up the music in the residence hall on full blast at midnight, that's not social responsibility. The student who will never return an email. If we don't return emails, we're not being socially responsible. Being a collaborative, cooperative member of our communities requires us basically to cooperate and be a good team player. All right, so this YouTube clip is fake, but it's so powerful. I like to say, you know, we don't have to like everybody and be best friends with everybody, but we do have to work together effectively. And many of you probably have, how many of you have homes where a dog and a cat coexist very peacefully and happily together? Yeah. And how many of you have homes where you have one of each and they don't? Just a few of those. Okay. Yeah. So we need to send your dog and cat to EI training. All right. So here we go. We're going to watch a YouTube clip this time about, and this is fake, but it makes the point about empathy.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't!
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out. We can work it out.
I tell you what, students remember these clips and they'll come back and say, I got in a fight with my boyfriend and he just wanted me to listen to his nail. You know, and you know, they're remembering these very powerful concepts, or very powerful for helping students learn the concepts. Okay, decision making. How many of you have ever taught students that made poor decisions? Right? Okay. The number one reason I think students make poor decisions is either reality testing or lack of impulse control, and I'm not sure which one. Reality testing is an aha experience for a lot of students when you teach them emotional intelligence, because what it means is that you're curious enough to seek information, and that you then, once you seek that information, and gather it, you don't overreact or underreact. And many times students just don't seek the information because they don't want to have the information, because the information may change what they do. For example, I have had in my teaching career a student walk into my office the day before the exam and say to me, and I'm quoting, "I had no idea I was failing your class." And how's that possible? I give back all the papers, I give back all the tests, I post all the grades on Blackboard. How is that possible? Well, if they skip class on the day tests are being given back, and they always know I give them back the next class period, and then they don't come to my office to find out, or they don't look on Blackboard. And unfortunately, the thing about psychology is a lot of people love it, okay? So they like going to class, they've attended well, but they've not studied, they haven't done anything, they're failing. And then they ask another interesting question, which shows a lack of reality testing. Well, what can I do to pass? It's like all of that's just going to magically go away. There's a lot of magical thinking when students aren't engaging in good reality testing. And so teaching them to be curious and seek information, and then once they get that information, to not overreact or underreact. Problem solving, this is not about solving math problems. It's not about solving the problem of, how do I get to work today? Well, could be about that. Problem solving is about how you solve problems. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. How to solve problems when emotions are involved. Think no further than Sully Sullenberg, the captain of that airplane who landed it on the water. Do you think when he realized that his plane was going to either have to be landed or crash, but he didn't have full control over it, do you think that might have excited some emotions in him? Like fear, terror, responsibility for all those people? But yet, it's a perfect example of problem solving. He was able to stay calm and focused and solve the problem despite the intense emotion. There are times when we're going to be in horrible situations, but if we get all befuddled mentally, we do much worse. And so controlling our emotions, not stuffing them, not pretending that we're not scared, but not letting those emotions overwhelm us. And that's a very valuable life skill for students. And then impulse control. This is another reason a lot of students don't get retained. They cannot delay drives, whether it's the drive to check their email, to check their text messages, or to text during class, even though you told them you'll kick them out of class if they do that. They can't resist that temptation. Or maybe the temptation of alcohol. But not all temptations relate to physical things. A lot of them relate to social media. They can't get off social media in the evening. Another part of impulse control is lack of patience. They spend 30 seconds looking at the math problem. They can't figure it out. They get impatient, close the book, they're done. That's poor impulse control. All right? And then not overreacting to situations. Not storming out of a room because you have a conflict with your roommate over something minor. All right, so this next clip I'm going to show you is an experiment that was done. This is a remake of it with children when they were 3 to 5 years of age. Many of you have seen it or heard of it. It's called the marshmallow experiment. They did it with children, sometimes leading them for 5 minutes with one marshmallow, sometimes 10, sometimes 15. The thing was, if they could resist the one marshmallow, they would be given a second marshmallow. Now, they've studied these kids all the way through now to adulthood, and I'll tell you some of what they found out.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. gonna go do something and then I'll come back.
It smells yummy. It smells really good.
It's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did?
Yeah.
You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
Hey, this little girl has good social responsibility, though. She's putting her trash away. All right. So those children were followed into the teenage years, and as teenagers, they were rated as more socially competent by teachers, better social relationships with their peers. They were measured on academic, and they controlled for things that should account for academic success, like parents' education, things like that. The children who resisted the marshmallow scored 200 points higher on their SAT scores. If you're going to work that math problem, it's going to take patience, right? And then if you work enough math problems successfully, you're going to do better on the SAT. It was amazing. As adults, they had less divorces, and by all measures of adult success in terms of career accomplishments, they were more accomplished. Impulse control is a real trip. It can trip you up. Poor impulse control. And there are people who might seem very calm but struggle with impulse control because they lack patience, and that is part of it. All right, and then the final set of three has to deal with stress. How do you handle stress? All of us have stress. Hans Selye, the famous stress researcher, said, and I'm quoting, "The absence of stress is death." We cannot get rid of stress. We have to learn how to let it affect us less and not become disruptive. Flexibility is adapting, changing your thoughts and behaviors to changing situations, and there's no greater adaptation in life, maybe except for having a baby, than going off to college, especially if you're living on campus. It changes your whole lifestyle. Now, a lot of you I know teach adult students who work at home, but there are still adaptations. Going back to school, while you're also working and while you're trying to be a parent. That's a huge decision and requiring a lot of flexibility. The old patterns won't work. And then optimism. Optimism is about framing. Again, it's not the situation. Situations can be terrible, horrifying. It's how you frame it. My best friend's son was diagnosed with a very rare and very deadly form of cancer when he was 6. Horrifying, terrible. You shouldn't be happy about that. Optimism, though, is choosing how you're going to respond. Are you going to say, this would be pessimistic, he's going to die, we just got to prepare ourselves for that? Or are you going to say, we're going to fight this, we're going to do research, we're going to try to find the best doctors, and as my friend liked to say, we're staying one drug ahead of the disease. Because while he was ill, for the 7 years he lived, 5 new drugs came out to treat his form of cancer. And that was their philosophy, stay one drug ahead, stay one drug ahead. And finally they ran out. And you know, he ultimately did die, but that 7 years was a much better 7 years for the whole family because they chose to remain positive and persistent. It's both combined. All right, I would love to show you this next clip, but I don't think we're going to have time, and I want to make sure we do enough interactive things. But this is a great one. If you've never seen the movie Pursuit of Happiness, it's well worth seeing. Multiple great clips. Here's the 30-second summary of what I was going to show you. This man is homeless. He's a single-parent dad. His only source of income is trying to sell a bone density scanner that's portable, and doctors don't want to buy it. And so he's gotten this chance to interview with Dean Witter for an unpaid internship as a stockbroker. And he gets arrested the night before because he actually wasn't homeless at this part of the movie, because he was painting his apartment because he couldn't pay the bill. He was arrested, he had paint all over him. They wanted to make sure his check would clear, so they wouldn't let him out of jail till the next morning at 9:45. His interview with Dean Witters at 10. This clip shows him, and this is what he did, literally racing through the streets of Chicago, running to this interview in paint clothes, paint in his hair, and having the confidence to walk in to a bunch of men in business suits. And he got the internship. And then out of 20 people that got the internship, he was the top performer. His real name is Chris Gardner, and he's gotten very famous now and does a lot of talks on leadership development. But this is a great clip. It's in your PowerPoint in case you want to watch it later. Happiness. A lot of our students struggle with depression, and sometimes depression is absolutely biochemical, but sometimes we can make an impact on that by things in our lives. And the research on happiness shows that there are 4 other EI scales that if you can improve your emotional intelligence in terms of your optimism, your self-regard, your self-actualization or goal orientation, and the quality of your interpersonal relationships, your happiness will go up. And so it's measured, but it's not an EI skill. Okay, so activity, at your tables. Talk about, if the student was low on the EI skills below, what would be some of the consequences? What mistakes would they make? Try to be as specific as possible. And just start talking out loud at your table. Start with low reality testing. Give you a couple minutes to do this, and then we'll get back together and see what you said. Of student situations. Can we have one with low reality testing? Somebody, anybody? Low reality testing. What are some situations students might get in because of that? Yes?
Student doesn't come to your class because he's failing in the other class, and he took time off to do work for that class and your class.
Right, did y'all hear that? Student skips your class because he's failing another class and figures he needs the time to work on the other class. Great example for reality testing.
Right.
All right, let's have an example of low impulse control. Yeah, so many. Oh, you're being volunteered.
I'm volunteering, Eileen. There was, she was talking about a student who literally cannot let go of their cell phone. Yeah. Like just can't put it down.
Cannot let go of the cell phone and cannot put it down. Okay? How about low social responsibility? Yes? Group work. And what does low social responsibility look like in group work?
The member doesn't do his or her share and expects other people to take it.
Yeah. And then,
Or the
opposite, good point. The student who takes over the group project and doesn't want to work collaboratively because they're scared other people will mess up their grade. That's also a lack of social responsibility. How about low optimism? Yes?
They give up far too soon.
They give up on their academic work far too soon, or on a goal that's important to them, related to maybe campus involvement or something like that. We could do this for each one of the 15 scales, but you'll see these over and over again. Just want to make you aware there is a way to assess emotional intelligence. I'll be talking about this more in my session at 11. The instrument is reliable, valid. It only costs $20. It will help you flag at-risk students. You can use it in group settings. You can do individual interpretations and coachings with students. Very powerful. And again, your PowerPoint has an example of a one-pager from that assessment, what it might look like for the students. I've got some testimony here from students about the EQI assessment. It's one thing for us to talk about these things in abstract with students, but the value of assessing it is they get to know where they stand. And most people are surprised about some aspect of their assessment results. I was surprised to find that my impulse control score wasn't very high because I'm one of those very calm, I never fire off that email that you wish you hadn't fired. I don't do things like that. But I'm not very patient. And so now I've learned to ask myself, when I'm working on a project that I don't want to do and I'm sick of it, and I'm ready just to get rid of it, I ask myself this question: is this finished, or am I just finished with it? And if it's the latter, and it often is, that's my impatience, and I stay with it. It helps me to stay with it. All right, some research. I'm going to fly through this because I want to get to our next activity. I just want you to be aware, the research is out there. Go to my website. There's a 4-page research summary that you can download with all the references. I'm hitting some high points here. Emotional intelligence, higher emotional intelligence is correlated with higher grades. First-year students, seniors, doesn't matter. And this study of optimism was at the University of Pennsylvania, for goodness sakes, one of the most selected institutions in the country, and SAT was not as important as optimism, even for those students in predicting GPA. All right, the next slide, retention. How many of your institutions are worried about either retention rates or graduation rates, right? That's why you're doing Encores, because it's a proven system for raising retention. There's also a lot of information about how teaching EI skills, or students with higher EI as they come in the door are more likely to be retained, more likely to graduate. The 3 studies I picked to put up here are all longitudinal studies. So you can't say, well, that was a cohort difference because it was cross-sectional. Decision making. I picked 2 that are common on campuses: alcohol abuse, procrastination. But lots of studies showing students with higher EI make better decisions. And then there's research about students and leadership. I talked to 2 young women who helped teach the Encores class at their school. There's probably at least 10 studies out there now that in different formats showing students being taught EI skills and pre and post assessment of EI and EI going up. So it can be taught. One study was as little as a half-day workshop with an individual coaching session for that student after that. All right, so now, in your packet there, you have a handout page that looks like this, the on-course model, the major points of the on-course model. And then you have a blank column. Because I know that emotional intelligence is one chapter within on-course, but I believe, and we'll see if you agree or not, it's fine not to, I think emotional intelligence skills underlie or support the ability for the students to accept self-responsibility, okay? So what I want you to do in this third column, yours is blank, I've already filled mine in. I want you to identify at your tables 2 to 3 to 4 EI characteristics that you believe are relevant to each of these on-course skills. And to make sure we get all 8 blocks covered, if you're on that far side of the room, if you'll start with number 1, the next set of tables start with item number 2, this set 3, this set 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Start there and then work your way to the blocks, the on-course principles, so that we make sure we get something in every block.
Yeah.
Once you finish your block, move on to others. Blocks, but I want you to hear from your colleagues here. Where's Jonathan with the all-around light? Okay, we'll have to talk loudly. Oh, you got it. If you could take, what we're going to do is try to fill in each block with the relevant EI skills. We'll start with block number 1 just to go in an orderly fashion here. So a group over there, somebody report out at your table, which are the 2 to 3 to 4 most important EI skills for accepting self-responsibility. Anybody over there want to?
Well, we first said obviously all of them.
Yeah, exactly. He said at first they said obviously all of them, right? But now they're going to narrow the list.
So we did a forced prioritization to determine and compare everything. And maybe it was just number 1 because we got really stuck with just the number 1, but we kind of felt that for accepting self-responsibility, self-regard is critical. Independence wouldn't be a bad thing to have a strong skill in, followed with impulse control. If we had those 3, then maybe we'd be pretty strong with the personal responsibility.
Okay, great. And all of them relate in some way. I also added optimism to my list. If you believe things are going to work out, it is easier to accept responsibility and to try to improve. Great, that was perfect. Brief explanation, giving you the highlights. Anybody from another table that did block number 1 want to add anything? All right, let's go to block number 2, self-motivation. Discover self-motivation. Who wants to report out from their table? Come on, volunteers. Oh, there we go.
I'll do it.
Motivated.
All right.
So we had for self-motivation decision-making, that in order to be self-motivated, you had to make good decisions about where you're going, keep yourself on course. Impulse control, you had to control your impulses. Optimism, it paid to be optimistic about where you're going. You wanted to go into a happy place. And then lastly, self-actualization. You needed to have a direct report, of what you were becoming.
Yep. Something that you're working for passion. Okay, master self-management. Who wants to report out from their table? Who did block 3? I think it was this table right here.
We did.
We did up here. So are you volunteering? Oh, no. Okay, thank you.
We thought on the decision-making composite, the reality testing, the problem solving, the impulse control, those are the most important, and also stress tolerance.
Yes. Excellent. All right. Employee interdependence. A group that, and if I have other ideas, I'll share them with you, but they nailed the 3 that I picked for that. Employee interdependence.
For employing interdependence, we chose interpersonal relationships, emotional self-expression, because in order to have build supportive relationships, you need to maintain relationships, and that's what emotional self-expression will aid in. And we also chose problem solving.
Okay, great. I would agree with all of those. I also added to my list assertiveness and empathy. Because if you're in relationships, you need both to be effective. All right, number block 5, gain self-awareness. Self-awareness. Table would like to share. There we go.
You said 1 through 3 and then 15.
Oh, they did the number of those. So,
Sorry. So we said we thought it was important that they did all the self-perception, composite, the self-regard, emotional self-awareness, self-actualization, and that they were optimistic about their abilities.
good. You added optimism, but I had the others as well. That's great.
We had it 4, 5, and 6. We did all 1 through 6 for that one.
Ah.
The emotional self-expression, the assertiveness, and the independence.
So that another table added assertiveness and independence. And I got to tell you, students who aren't assertive, one of the best things to help them figure out is self-awareness around why not. Were you raised not to be assertive? Do you think being assertive means you're being aggressive? By the way, that's a common misconception. Assertiveness is there's no intent to harm anyone else. You're just taking up for yourself. With aggression, there's some intent to harm the other person or to dominate the other person in some way. Yes, sir.
I thought flexibility would be a good one as well, because they got to learn how to read not only themselves but others, as they communicate a situation.
Right. Being able to adapt to changes, shift their priorities. Block number 6, adopt lifelong learning. This was actually the hardest block for me. So I'm anxious to see what the tables come up with. Who did number 6? Now nobody wants to say it out loud because I'm scared. All right, thank you.
For stress tolerance, adopt lifelong learning. I think primarily they need stress tolerance because people need to understand that you're not going to get it immediately. You need persistence for that. Optimism, flexibility, and primarily independence, actually.
Ah,
I think.
that's great. I had flexibility and optimism, and I like the way you added the independence and what other one?
Stress tolerance.
Stress tolerance. Terrific. All right, and the obvious self-actualization is in there too. All right, develop emotional intelligence. As it's defined by OnCourse, there are certain of the 15 EI skills that are most relevant. Who did block number 7? So a lot of this, okay, great, thank you.
So we had 5 for this. We thought emotional self-awareness, emotional self-expression, also empathy and interpersonal relationships, as well as impulse control.
Terrific. Great. Y'all are fast learners. I love it. All right, number 8. Anybody did block 8 want to share? Believe in themselves, see themselves as capable, loving, lovable, rather.
Self-actualization.
All right, we got a volunteer.
We decided that we thought the most important were self-actualization, assertiveness, self-regard, and stress tolerance.
Okay? Good. Terrific. So the key is a lot, when I teach leadership development, and some of you are probably familiar with the Cousins and Posner model of leadership development, like model the way. Well, it's hard to model the way if you don't have social responsibility and empathy and self-actualization, strong goal orientation. And so one of the ways to think about emotional intelligence is these are foundational skills that can help students with even getting better at on-course materials, or help them develop leadership skills. All right, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to show you what's in the rest of the presentation because I want to have time for questions. I knew that I was putting more than we could get to, but I like doing that because at least now you have it and it will stir some thinking in you. This slide here is a summary slide of all the different ways you can infuse emotional intelligence on your campus, and it's not exhaustive because every time I go to a conference, I meet somebody who comes up with a new way. For example, not on this list, there are campuses beginning to use emotional intelligence now in conduct cases. What a brilliant idea. Instead of focusing on punishment, focus on what went wrong. If the student lacks impulse control, give them situations, instead of punishment, give them skill sets to develop their impulse control. If they lack reality testing, give them those skill sets. And they're also training the conduct board members to think about EI as they're looking at the cases. All right? But these are just some of the ways that you can infuse EI learning on your campus. You can do it in curricular and co-curricular. I was telling someone over while y'all were doing the exercise that one of the biggest fans on our campus was the Disability Services Office, because she said, I finally have a framework that I can talk to students. So if they say, well, I can't go to Professor so-and-so and remind them of my accommodations, that's too scary. Assertiveness, self-regard. Or they give up too easily. That's lack of optimism, lack of impulse control. And she said it made a huge difference. So what I want to spend just a couple minutes doing, I've got a case study here of what we did at my university that you can read later, it's self-explanatory. At each table, I want you to just take a couple minutes because I want to leave 5 minutes for Q&A. But come up with one target group on your campus, whether it's athletes or students at risk or first-year students or sophomores. They get lost in the shuffle sometimes. One program, one group of students. I've given you an example, first-year athletes, and just one activity that you could do with that group of students to teach them some EI skills. So let's get busy on that. I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk as a table, and then we'll come back and take questions. Hands, how many people got a great idea for an easy activity? Nobody? How many of you came up with a group or an activity that you can infuse EI with? Okay, that activity, oh, thank you, one person. I'm just joking. There are so many ways you can infuse EI, you wouldn't believe it. And you don't have to start new programs. You don't have to hire new personnel. Look for existing places on campus and infuse it there. Before I take questions, I'm just going to say 2 things. One, if you want to know more about how to infuse it on your campus, I'm doing a session at 11. I welcome you being there. I will also be at the table right out here where my books will be available. And you can sign up for a sheet on a sheet of paper if you want to know more about the assessment or more about program infusion. And then I'll have your email address and can contact you because I don't want to keep you from going to the other sessions here. All right, questions? Any questions? Yes, front table.
The question that we,
the question that we had is, are these EQ, kind of, I forgot what you call them, composite, are they cross-cultural or are they Western, focused on Western culture? Because things like assertiveness or independence, you know, are not necessarily valued in, say, collectivistic cultures.
Right. They are pretty applicable cross-culturally. There are some differences. Asian Americans do score a little bit lower than Euro-Americans on some of the areas. You identified the obvious ones because of cultural values and differences. That's okay. But assertiveness is necessary. If you're an Asian student on campus and somebody's bullying you, you've got to have assertiveness, whether that was part of your cultural value or not. So yes, there are small ethnic differences and small cultural differences, but again, they're small. Small age differences, our EI gets better with age. And there are some male-female differences, but again, they're small. Yes?
Two questions quickly. The first one deals with empathy. I generally think I show empathy in most situations. On one occasion, a student says, well, you didn't experience that. How can you show empathy? Maybe you're sympathizing with me. But today you're saying it's just showing concern for others. And I think I like that. But how would you address it to the student who is talking to me? I didn't experience it.
Yes.
And the other one would be problem solving. You said it involves, problem solving is solving problems in situations or for situations that involve emotions. I thought all problem solvers involve emotions of some sort. Thank you.
I think a lot of problems do rev up our emotions, but the ones we really want to pay the most attention to are the problems that really rev up our emotions, because that's when we can make the biggest mistakes. If our emotions are dictating our responses rather than us managing our emotions to respond more effectively. If Sully Sullenberg had allowed himself to be overcome with his fear, we would have 300 dead people. So you're right to a certain extent. If your car breaks down, that's a problem to solve, and you might get frustrated. But that's not as big a problem as the airplane, and so it's all a matter of degree. The empathy-sympathy thing, there is a difference. Sympathy is really feeling sorry for somebody else. Empathy is trying to cognitively understand it from their perspective. And the student who says to you, you can't really have empathy for me because you've never been in this situation, I would say maybe your emotions around that situation aren't going to be as intense, but think back to my fingernail story. Because I understood her perspective, I was able to change my behavior. Now, did I have to get as upset about the fingernail as she did? I don't believe so. Time is up. I will be out at the table for those of you who have more questions.